Welcome to the Deep Dive. We cut through the noise, bringing you the key insights on big, complex topics. And today, we're tackling a really tough one, a story that's just, well, resonated everywhere. We're talking about the Air India Flight 171 crash. Happened in Ahmedabad, June 12th, 2025. Aviation disasters, they're thankfully rare, but when they happen, they force us to ask these huge questions about safety, engineering.
Absolutely. And this one, it's one of India's worst in, decades? So the scrutiny is intense.
Exactly. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack this. We want to go from those first moments right after takeoff through the crash itself, the investigation that's happening right now, and what it all means for flying safety globally. We've dug through a lot of information to pull out what's crucial, and there are some frankly astonishing details here. The sheer speed of it all, where the plane ended up, and this detail about a sole survivor that's just, it makes you rethink things. Okay, so let's dive in. We're talking Air India Flight 171. It's a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, tail number VTANB. These planes, they have a reputation, right?
Yeah.
Advanced tech, comfortable.
Top of the line, really. Composite materials, sophisticated systems.
So it takes off from Ahmedabad, heading for London Gatwick.
Yeah.
230 passengers, 12 crew, takes off from runway 28. Everything seems normal. And then, bam, catastrophe. Just 33 seconds after getting airborne.
33 seconds.
Less than a minute. A catastrophic failure.
And what's so striking, as you said, is not just how fast it happened, but that it involved a modern plane like the 7878. These things are supposed to have redundancies, safety layers, and the impact location. That just adds another whole layer of tragedy. It didn't crash in an empty field. It hit a 5-story hostel building.
A medical hostel, BJ Medical College. Magani Nagar.
Yeah, a really densely populated area right near the airport perimeter. And the immediate result was just horrific. A massive explosion, a fireball. It just engulfed the wreckage and a huge part of that building incredibly quickly. An absolute inferno.
And you just have to picture that scene. Amidst all that fire and destruction, local people, residents, and the first emergency crews rushing in, just pure instinct to help, facing something completely overwhelming. Heroic, really.
Utterly heroic, running towards danger on that scale.
So let's pivot to the human cost here, because it's staggering. On board the aircraft, 242 people, passengers and crew, and 241 of them lost their lives.
Almost everyone.
Almost total loss in the air, and this is where it gets really almost unbelievable. There was one survivor.
Yeah.
A single person.
It's just one.
A British national Indian origin. They were sitting in seat 11A. They had serious injuries, yes, but survivable injuries.
It is astounding.
When you think about the forces involved in a crash like that, hitting a building.
Yeah.
The fire.
Yeah.
How does anyone survive? It feels almost miraculous.
It really does. And from an investigation standpoint, that's huge. If you connect this to the bigger picture, that one survivor from that specific seat, 11A, it challenges everything we think we know about unsurvivable crashes.
How so?
Well, investigators will be looking intensely at why 11A. Was it a microclimate within the cabin? Did that section break away differently? The specific forces acting on that exact spot. It becomes a critical data point for future crash survivability research. It forces a rethink.
Wow. Okay. And then there's the tragedy on the ground, too.
Exactly. It wasn't just contained to the aircraft. That hostel was full of medical students. 19 people on the ground lost their lives. Over 60 injured.
Oh, terrible.
So you have this double impact. Loss in the air, loss and injury on the ground. It makes it particularly poignant.
And the emergency response must have been chaos.
It was incredibly challenging. Swift, yes, but think about it. A massive fire, structural collapse, accessing victims both from the plane and the building, getting the injured to hospitals. Firefighting was complicated. It was a huge, complex scene.
And the fact that Prime Minister Modi visited the site and the hospital so quickly.
Yes, that really highlighted the national significance. Immediate top-level government attention and concern.
So after any crash, the big question, the urgent question, is always why? How did this happen? Which brings us to the investigation. Hugely important, obviously, and really complex.
Extremely complex.
The lead agency is India's AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau.
RCAC.
But because it's a Boeing plane, the U.S. NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, they're involved too, right?
Absolutely. That's standard procedure. The manufacturer's home country investigator always participates.
And we also have India's BCAS, the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, and the DGCA, the Director General of Civil Aviation, involved. So multiple agencies trying to piece this together.
Right, a multi-pronged effort.
So when you have a failure this sudden, this catastrophic, What are the main things they're digging into? What are the priorities?
Okay, so the focus is broad but incredibly deep. Number one, always, is the recorders. The flight data recorder, the black box for all the flight parameters, speeds, altitudes, control inputs, and the cockpit voice recorder for what the pilots were saying. Any sounds in the cockpit.
Crucial evidence.
Absolutely critical. Then they're looking at every possible mechanical failure. Engines, control systems, hydraulics, electrics, the actual structure of the plane itself. Could something have just broken?
Right.
And interestingly, given how instantaneous it seemed, they haven't ruled out sabotage or some kind of external interference. It has to be considered, even if it seems less likely initially.
Okay.
Then there are human factors. Pilot training, how they reacted or didn't have time to react, or procedure.
Even though it happens so fast.
You still review everything. Training records, fatigue levels, procedures. It all forms part of the picture. And finally, airport operations. Was everything correct with the runway, air traffic control instructions in those seconds before and after takeoff?
A huge checklist.
It really is. They leave no stone unturned.
So where are they now? It's July 2025 in our scenario. What are the early findings, if any?
Well, it's still preliminary. You have to remember that. But a few key things are emerging. First, the aircraft's maintenance records apparently showed no obvious signs of pre-existing technical problems. That makes the sudden failure even more baffling.
So it wasn't something they should have caught on the ground.
Not obviously, based on the records looked at so far. Second, the flight data clearly shows a sudden, uncommanded loss of control. Something went wrong very abruptly.
And maybe the most chilling part,
Perhaps. No distress signal. Nothing transmitted from the cockpit.
which tells you.
It tells you there was likely zero time. The event, whatever it was, wasn't just catastrophic, it was instantaneous. No window for the crew to even try to call for help.
That just underscores the speed we talked about.
Precisely. It shifts the focus heavily towards a sudden mechanical failure, a structural breakup, or perhaps that external factor rather than something that developed over even a few seconds. And of course, standard procedure, they're meticulously reviewing all security footage around the airport, looking for anything unusual, anyone who shouldn't have been there.
Right. So this awful event, it naturally makes you look at the bigger picture of aviation safety in India. And Ahmedabad has sadly seen tragedy before, right? There was that Indian Airlines crash back in '88.
Flight 113, yes. That was a Boeing 737. It led to significant reforms back then, particularly around pilot training for landings in poor visibility and airport approach systems.
And since then, especially in the 2000s, India's aviation sector has grown incredibly fast. Huge expansion.
Massive growth, more airlines, more routes, more passengers, and generally the safety record had been improving significantly over those years.
Which makes this 2025 crash
Such a significant blow. It's the deadliest air disaster in India in over 25 years. So it's not just a terrible tragedy in itself, it's a major setback. It forces this whole re-examination. Is safety oversight keeping pace with the growth? Is the infrastructure adequate? How prepared are emergency services, really?
It reignites all those critical debates.
Exactly. It puts everything back under the microscope.
So what's the response been from the government, the industry?
Well, immediate actions were taken, as you'd expect. Similar aircraft models were grounded temporarily for checks. That's pretty standard.
Right, precautionary.
And comprehensive safety audits were launched, looking at airline operations, maintenance procedures, airport facilities.
And looking ahead, long term.
There's talk of several key measures, things like strengthening security protocols at airports even further. Upgrading air traffic management systems technology always moves on. Enhancing pilot training, specifically for these sudden, complex emergency scenarios. Investing more in crash survivability research, learning from incidents like this one, including the survivor aspect.
And a better coordination.
Absolutely crucial. Improving how all the different authorities, aviation bodies, emergency services, security agencies work together during a crisis, making that response more seamless.
Understandable. The public reaction must have been immense.
Oh, absolutely. Widespread grief, mourning across the country and beyond. And of course, calls for answers, for accountability.
And the media.
Intense focus, lots of coverage on the human stories. Naturally, the victims, the survivor, but also trying to explain the technical side, tracking the investigation, and fueling the policy debates about what needs to change.
It's interesting you mention even popular media like Drive to Survive, somehow playing a role.
Well, maybe indirectly. Shows like that, even though they're about F1, they bring high-stakes engineering, safety, and human factors into the public consciousness. It perhaps makes people more receptive or interested in understanding the complexities of aviation safety when something like this happens.
Makes sense. But at the heart of it all, it's the human toll.
Always.
Hundreds of families grieving, communities devastated,
Hmm.
victims from all walks of life, students starting their careers, families on holiday, professionals,
A whole cross-section of society.
and that lone survivor story.
Yeah.
It stands out as this incredible, perhaps improbable example of resilience against just impossible odds.
A testament to survival, yes.
So when we take a step back, what are the enduring lessons here? What should we take away from this?
Look, I think the Air India 171 crash is just a stark, somber reminder. Aviation is incredibly safe, statistically, but safety isn't guaranteed. It shows that even with modern aircraft, advanced systems, vulnerabilities can exist. Complacency is the enemy. It just underscores this constant need for vigilance, for pushing innovation and safety, for learning and improving every single aspect of how we fly. Safety isn't a goal you reach, it's a process you never stop working on.
A powerful point, and hopefully the lessons that do come out of this incredibly difficult investigation will genuinely help prevent future tragedies. That has to be the goal, right? To honor those who were lost by making flying safer for everyone. So as you think about this story, how incredibly fast it all happened, 33 seconds, the complex investigation trying to find answers, just consider that amazing network of people and technology that has to work perfectly for every single flight we take. And how one single catastrophic failure, even if it's rare, can have such a devastating impact, not just in the sky, but for so many people on the ground as well. Something to reflect on.